Long before gold coins clinked in purses or silver bars were stacked in vaults, wealth in Mesoamerica took a far stranger form. It could be eaten, brewed, traded, stolen, counterfeited, hoarded, taxed, and even faked. It was small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, bitter enough to make first-time drinkers recoil, and valuable enough to start wars. This wealth was cacao. In the ancient Aztec and Maya civilizations, cacao beans were not simply a luxury or a foodstuff. They were currency, medicine, ritual substance, and social divider all at once. To control cacao was to control power. And between roughly 250 AD and 900 AD, the Maya perfected one of the most sophisticated non-metal monetary systems the world has ever seen, built not on gold or silver, but on seeds. The story of cacao begins in the tropical lowlands of Mesoamerica, where cacao trees thrive in warm, humid shade. These trees were temperamental, sensitive to climate and soil, and slow to mature. They could not be grown everywhere, which immediately made cacao rare. Regions that could cultivate it held an economic advantage over those that could not. The Maya understood this early. By the height of the classic Maya period, cacao had become a controlled commodity, produced in specific regions and moved along established trade routes. Archaeological evidence residue analysis from ceramic vessels, depictions in murals and glyphs in codices shows cacao being transported, stored, and consumed in highly regulated ways. But cacao was not valuable simply because it was scarce. It was valuable because of what it represented. To the Maya, cacao was sacred. It was tied to creation myths, divine ancestry, and the blood of the gods. In some stories, cacao trees sprouted from the bodies of sacrificed deities. Drinking cacao was not just nourishment, it was communion. It connected the human world to the supernatural one. This spiritual weight gave cacao a power that metal never could. Between 250 AD and 900 AD, cacao beans functioned as commodity money throughout much of the Maya world. Individual beans had standardized value. They could be counted, stored, and exchanged. Historical accounts and later colonial records suggest that cacao beans were used to purchase everyday goods: food, clothing, tools, pottery, even animals. A rabbit might cost several dozen beans, a turkey, hundreds. A fine cotton cloak could command a small fortune in cacao. Unlike barter systems, cacao currency allowed for precise transactions. Prices could fluctuate. Debt could be calculated. Tribute could be demanded in exact quantities. This made cacao ideal for taxation and state control. Royal courts understood this perfectly. Cacao beans were often stored in royal treasuries alongside jade, obsidian, feathers, and other symbols of elite status. Some caches discovered by archaeologists suggest careful accounting being sorted, protected from moisture, and guarded as jealously as any gemstone. These were not snacks, they were assets. The ruling class consumed cacao differently from commoners. Elite cacao drinks were often mixed with spices, honey, chili, vanilla, or fermented additives. The resulting beverage was thick, foamy, and intensely bitter, nothing like modern sweetened chocolate. To drink cacao in this form was to signal status. It was served at diplomatic meetings, marriage negotiations, and religious ceremonies. Common people, by contrast, rarely drank cacao. When they did, it was often diluted, less refined, or reserved for special occasions. Most cacao passed through their hands not as food but as money. This dual role, both consumable and spendable, made cacao a uniquely powerful economic tool. It also made it vulnerable. Because cacao beans were so valuable, counterfeiting became a problem. Historical records describe beans being hollowed out and filled with dirt or wax, then sealed and dyed to resemble the real thing. Some beans were reused after being spent, dried, or partially consumed. Markets had to develop systems of inspection, and merchants became skilled at spotting fakes by weight, texture, and smell. The fact that counterfeiting existed at all tells us something crucial. Cacao currency was widespread, trusted, and essential enough to exploit. Cacao also functioned as medicine. Maya and later Aztec texts described cacao-based remedies for fatigue, digestive problems, infections, and even emotional imbalance. Mixed with herbs and flowers, cacao drinks were prescribed by healers and shamans. The stimulant properties of cacao, now known to come from compounds like theobromine, were recognized long before modern chemistry explained them. This medicinal role further increased cacao's value. It was not just money, it was health. A store of cacao beans represented security in times of illness as much as economic hardship. By the post-classic period, the Aztecs inherited and expanded the cacao economy. Unlike the Maya, the Aztecs lived in a region where cacao could not grow. This made them dependent on tribute from conquered territories. Entire provinces were required to send vast quantities of cacao beans to the Aztec capital each year. Cacao flowed into Tenochtitlan by the millions, fueling markets that astonished Spanish observers when they arrived in the 16th century. Spanish chroniclers described bustling marketplaces where cacao beans changed hands constantly. They noted standardized prices, professional merchants, and strict enforcement of market rules. To European eyes, it was shocking, an empire run on seeds, and yet the system worked. Cacao had many advantages as money. It was portable, it was divisible, it had intrinsic value. It was widely desired. And because it could spoil, it discouraged long-term hoarding, keeping wealth circulating rather than stagnant. But cacao currency also had limits. Droughts, crop failures, or disruptions in trade routes could destabilize economies. Overproduction in one region could devalue beans. Political collapse could interrupt tribute flows. In times of crisis, cacao could be eaten rather than spent, collapsing monetary systems overnight. Some scholars have suggested that fluctuations in cacao supply may have played a role in political instability during the later Maya collapse. While not the sole cause, economic stress layered onto environmental and social pressures may have weakened state power. When the Spanish arrived, they initially struggled to understand cacao's value. Gold and silver were what they sought. But they quickly adapted, using cacao beans themselves as currency in early colonial markets. Ironically, it was European sugar that would eventually transform cacao from a bitter elite drink into the sweet commodity we recognize today. In doing so, something was lost. Modern chocolate is abundant, inexpensive, and stripped of its sacred context. The idea that a single cacao bean could buy a meal or represent divine blood feels almost impossible now. Yet for centuries, entire civilizations organized their economies around this fragile seed. Cacao was wealth you could drink, medicine you could spend, and power you could swallow. It blurred the line between the material and the spiritual, between survival and status. It fed bodies, healed the sick, honored the gods, and moved empires. In the ancient Maya and Aztec worlds, gold did not rule. The bitter seed did.